Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Carl Jensen was always the type to wake up early, work hard, and come home at the end of the day with grease on his hands and a clear conscience. He owned a mechanic shop in Boise, Idaho, and built everything from scratch. He started fixing cars in his garage, taking any job that came his way, until little by little he saved enough money, bought better tools, rented a warehouse, and finally opened Jensen Auto Repair. It wasn't the biggest shop in town, but it had a reputation. People trusted him. They knew that if Carl said a car was fixed, it was truly fixed, no fluff, no runaround, no charging extra for work that hadn't been done. That's just how he was about everything, straightforward, honest, loyal. When he met Rachel, she was working as a waitress at a diner on Main Street. Carl always stopped there for coffee before opening the shop. She was pretty, friendly, the kind of person who could make even the grumpiest customer smile. Over time, they started talking more, exchanging glances, until he finally worked up the courage to ask her out. Their relationship moved quickly but intensely. Carl knew he'd found the right person. Rachel seemed to enjoy a simple life. She didn't ask for luxuries and said all she wanted was someone present, someone who'd take care of her and make her feel safe. And that's exactly what Carl was. After 2 years together, he proposed. It was simple, no big production, but full of feeling. She said yes through tears, and they got married in a small ceremony with only close friends and family. The first few years were good. Rachel landed a better job as a receptionist at a medical clinic downtown. She earned a decent salary, had regular hours, and benefits. Carl kept running the shop, working Monday through Saturday, sometimes even Sundays when an urgent job came in. The routine was tough, but he never complained. After all, everything he did was for their future, to own a house, to give Rachel a comfortable life. And she, at least at first, seemed to appreciate it. Whenever he came home exhausted, she'd have dinner ready, ask how his day went, and laugh at the stories he told about the crazy customers who showed up at the shop. But over time, things began to change. Not suddenly, but gradually, like a thin crack slowly spreading across a wall. Rachel started growing distant. It wasn't anything obvious that Carl could point to and say, "Look, here's the problem." It was subtle. She stopped asking about his day. She spent more time on her phone. When he tried to start a conversation, she'd respond with one-word answers, as if her mind were somewhere else. Carl tried not to worry. He figured maybe it was work, maybe she was tired or stressed. After all, dealing with sick people all day couldn't be easy. Then Rachel announced she was going to start doing yoga. Carl thought it was odd. Not that yoga was bad, it just didn't seem like her. In the 7 years they'd been together, she'd never shown any interest in physical exercise. She always said the gym was boring, running was dull, and she'd rather stay home watching TV. But now, all of a sudden, yoga was the answer to everything. She said she'd been feeling stressed and anxious and needed something to calm her mind. Wanting to support her, Carl said he thought it was great. He even offered to pay for the membership, but she said it wasn't necessary. Her clinic had a partnership with a studio, and she'd gotten a discount. At first, classes were once a week, always Saturday mornings. Rachel would leave around 9 and come back near noon. Carl didn't mind much. He used the time alone to do some chores around the house, watch TV, or rest. But as the weeks went by, the classes started increasing. From once a week to twice, then 3 times, still Saturdays, but now also Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it wasn't just the frequency that changed, it was the duration. What used to be an hour, maybe an hour and a half, turned into 2 hours, then 3. And Rachel always came back with excuses. The instructor gave us extra exercises, we stayed chatting after class, there was a meditation talk. Carl accepted it, but deep down, he started feeling something wasn't right. He noticed little details that didn't add up. Rachel would leave for yoga all dressed up, hair brushed, light makeup, new workout clothes, tight ones that hugged her body. She'd even bought a new black set with gold accents that must have cost a fortune. And the strangest part, she always came back with her hair perfectly in place, makeup untouched, not a drop of sweat. Carl knew what exercise felt like. When he pushed himself hard at the shop, he ended the day soaked, dirty, and exhausted. But Rachel came back from these so-called intense yoga sessions looking like she'd just taken a stroll around the block. Once, he joked, "That yoga of yours can't be too intense, huh? You always come back fresh as a daisy." Rachel immediately got defensive. She said yoga wasn't about sweating, it was about stretching, breathing, balance. That he wouldn't understand since he'd never tried it. Carl let it go, but it stuck in his mind. And there was something else, her phone. Rachel had always left her phone lying around, on the table, on the couch, no password, no secrets. But for the past few months, her phone was glued to her side. Always face down. Always locked with a passcode. And whenever it rang while Carl was nearby, she'd grab it quickly, glance at it, hang up, and say it was spam or a message from her work group. Once, Carl walked into the living room and saw her texting something on her phone, smiling. As soon as she saw him, she locked the screen instantly and tossed the phone aside like she'd been startled. Carl wasn't the paranoid type. He didn't snoop, pry, or make a scene. But all these things together started weighing on him. And the more he tried not to think about it, the more the details stood out. The new perfume she only wore on yoga days. The expensive lingerie he'd seen in her drawer but that she never wore at home. The messages she deleted. The calls she took in another room. It was a Saturday, about 6 months ago, that everything started falling apart. Rachel woke up early, took a long shower, and got dressed carefully. She said she was going to an intensive class and wouldn't be back until late afternoon, around 4 or 5 o'clock. Carl thought that was strange. 5 hours of yoga? But he didn't say anything. He just nodded and watched her leave. He stood there in the kitchen, drinking coffee, trying to distract himself. He turned on the TV but couldn't focus. He picked up his phone and scrolled through social media, but his mind wouldn't settle. Then he remembered. Months earlier, Rachel had complained about feeling unsafe driving alone at night, especially when leaving work late. Wanting to help, Carl had bought one of those small, discreet GPS trackers you hide in a car. He'd installed it under the dashboard, connected it to an app, and showed her how it worked. "If anything happens, I'll know where you are and get there fast," he'd said. Rachel thanked him and said she felt safer. And Carl hadn't touched it again, until that Saturday. He grabbed his phone, opened the tracker app. The screen loaded for a few seconds, then a blinking blue dot appeared. Carl zoomed in on the map. The car was parked, but not at any yoga studio. It was at a hotel. A hotel on the edge of town, near the highway. Carl's stomach turned. He stared at the screen, hoping the dot would move, that it was just a GPS error. But no, the car stayed right there. He took a deep breath and tried to think of an explanation. Maybe the studio had moved locations. Maybe it was a special event, a retreat, who knows. But deep down, he knew. He knew none of it made sense. Yoga classes don't happen in hotels. They don't last 5 hours. They don't leave you completely dry. Carl turned off the TV, grabbed his truck keys, and left. He didn't think much or plan ahead, he just went. He drove through Boise streets, past downtown, and got on the highway. His heart pounded, but he kept his hands steady on the wheel. 20 minutes later, he arrived at the hotel. It was one of those simple roadside places with a large parking lot and a faded facade, not fancy, but not cheap either. Carl parked his truck in a corner where he could see the entrance and the lot. And there it was, Rachel's car, sitting alone. He sat there, watching and waiting. He wasn't sure what he was waiting for, but he felt he needed to see it with his own eyes. He pulled out his phone, opened the camera, and switched to photo mode, ready. Time passed slowly. Carl watched people come and go from the hotel, but no sign of Rachel. He started doubting himself. Maybe she'd gotten a ride with someone. Maybe the car was there for some other reason. But he wasn't leaving, not until he was sure. 3.5 hours later, 3.5 hours, the hotel door opened. And there she was. Rachel. Walking out slowly, adjusting her bag on her shoulder, hair loose, smiling. And next to her, a man. A man Carl recognized. Dr. Marcus Hale. One of the doctors at the clinic where Rachel worked. Carl had seen him a few times when picking Rachel up from work. A tall guy in his mid-40s, gray hair, well-tailored suits, the kind who thinks he's hot stuff. Carl felt his blood boil, but he didn't move. He kept watching. Rachel and Marcus stopped in front of her car. They chatted for a few seconds, laughing, relaxed. Then Marcus leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a quick goodbye kiss, it was slow, intimate, full of longing. Carl gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. But he didn't get out of the truck. No scene. He just started taking pictures. Click. 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 He captured multiple angles, Rachel and Marcus kissing, Marcus with his hand on her waist, the two saying goodbye, Marcus getting into a sleek black car, Rachel getting into hers, still smiling. Carl put his phone away, waited for them both to leave, then started his truck. He didn't follow her. He went straight home. When he got there, he walked in, locked the door, sat at the kitchen table, and started organizing the photos. He transferred them to his computer, saved them in multiple folders, made backups. Then he opened the tracker app and took screenshots showing Rachel's car at the hotel, with date, time, everything. He organized it all into a folder, printed copies, and tucked everything into an envelope. When he was done, he went out to the garage. He grabbed an old motorcycle he'd been fixing, turned on the radio, and got to work. He needed to keep his mind busy, he couldn't just sit and think, because if he did, he'd explode. And he couldn't afford to explode. Not yet. He needed to stay calm, be rational, and figure out his next move. Around 6 that evening, he heard Rachel's car pull in. She parked, walked inside, and headed straight for the garage. Carl was there, crouched over the bike, acting like nothing had happened. "Hey, babe," she said, all smiles, tossing her bag into a corner. "Sorry I'm late. Class ran long today, and then we hung out afterward." Carl didn't look up. He kept working on the bike, wiping his hands on an old rag. "Good class?" he asked, voice calm and neutral. "Oh, it was great. Tiring, but great. I'm starving. I'll hop in the shower, and we can order something, okay?" Carl finally stood up and looked at her. Rachel was still smiling, but her smile faded when she saw his expression. He pulled out his phone, unlocked it, opened his photo gallery, and showed her the pictures. The first one was her and Marcus leaving the hotel. The second, the two of them kissing. The third, Marcus with his hand on her waist. 3.5 hours at a hotel with Dr. Marcus, Carl said, voice still calm but firm. Must have been a pretty, private lesson. Rachel turned pale. Her bag slipped off her shoulder and hit the floor. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Carl kept going, showing her more photos, one after another. "I put a tracker on your car, remember? Months ago. You said you felt safer. I never used it, until today." She tried to speak, stammering something. "Carl, I can explain, it's not what you think." "Not what I think?" Carl let out a dry, humorless laugh. Rachel, I have photos of you kissing another man outside a hotel. I have tracker logs showing you spent 3.5 hours inside. Which part am I getting wrong? She started crying, tears streaming down her face. It was a mistake, Carl. A mistake. I was confused, I don't even know what happened. We were just talking at first, and then. And then what? Carl interrupted, voice rising slightly. And then you thought it'd be a good idea to cheat on your husband? Lie to me for months? Pretend you were going to yoga while meeting another man? Rachel sobbed, trying to move closer, but Carl stepped back. Don't touch me. Carl, please. I love you. I messed up, I know I did, but I love you. We can get through this. We can go to therapy, talk it out, I promise it'll never happen again. You love me? Carl shook his head, incredulous. You don't know what love is, Rachel. Love is loyalty. It's respect. It's sticking with someone through good times and bad, not running off to someone else's bed when things get a little boring. He picked up the envelope he'd prepared, the one with all the evidence, and set it on the workbench. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling a lawyer. You've got until the end of the day to pack your things and get out. I don't want you in this house anymore. Rachel tried arguing, pleading, but Carl had already turned his back. He went upstairs, locked the bedroom door, and sat on the bed, staring at the wall. He didn't cry. Didn't yell. He just sat there, processing everything, feeling 7 years crumble in a matter of hours. The next morning, Carl woke up early, as usual. Rachel was already gone. She'd taken some things and left during the night. He grabbed the envelope, went to see a lawyer he knew, a serious, competent guy, and told him everything. He showed the photos, the tracker screenshots, explained the whole situation. The lawyer listened carefully, reviewed the evidence, and was blunt, you've got a solid case. Idaho still considers adultery a factor in divorce proceedings. With this proof, you'll walk away without losing a thing. Carl nodded. I don't want anything from her. I just want her out of my life. The lawyer paused, then asked, what about Dr. Marcus? Do you want this made public? Carl thought for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone, looked up Marcus's wife's number, she was also a doctor, a partner at the clinic, well known in town, and sent her a simple message with 2 photos attached. Thought you should know who your husband spends his Saturday afternoons with. He got a reply half an hour later. Just, thank you. Carl didn't know what would happen to Marcus, but he knew it wouldn't end there. And it didn't. In the days that followed, the bomb exploded. Marcus's furious and humiliated wife didn't keep it to herself. As one of the clinic's main partners, she had influence and connections. Within a week, the medical board was notified about Marcus's inappropriate conduct with an employee. Rachel was called in for statements. Marcus tried to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable, the photos, the tracker logs, everything lined up. Trying to protect its reputation, the clinic acted fast. Marcus was suspended, investigated, and months later lost his medical license indefinitely. His wife filed for divorce, took half of everything, and walked away with her head held high. Marcus, who loved being the center of attention, became the butt of jokes in clinic hallways and among local physician circles. As for Rachel, she was fired. The clinic claimed she'd violated their code of conduct by getting involved with a superior. She tried to appeal, but there was no fighting the evidence. She lost her job, her reputation, and whatever shred of dignity she had left. Carl moved on. He focused on work, on the shop, on rebuilding his own life. It wasn't easy. There were nights he lay awake replaying everything in his head, wondering where he'd gone wrong, what he could have done differently. But over time, he realized he hadn't done anything wrong. He'd been loyal, hardworking, present. The mistake was hers, and he wasn't going to carry that guilt. Months later, on a Friday afternoon, Carl was at the shop when he got a text. It was from Rachel. "Carl, I know you don't want to talk to me. But I just wanted to apologize. Really. I ruined everything. I lost the best man I ever had. I was an idiot. I'm so sorry." Carl read the message, took a deep breath, and replied with just one line, "Yoga teaches balance. You should have practiced more." He blocked her number, deleted the conversation, and got back to work. More time passed, and Carl truly began rebuilding his life. He didn't shut down or become bitter. He stayed true to who he'd always been, honest, hardworking, loyal. He started hanging out more with friends, going to bars, allowing himself to meet new people. He wasn't looking for anything, but he wasn't running away either. One night, he was at a bar with some buddies having a beer when one of them laughed and said, "Dude, did you hear about Marcus? Word is he's teaching driver's ed now 'cause he can't practice medicine anymore." Another friend added, "And Rachel? Heard she's working at a grocery store, cashier. Far from that fancy clinic." Carl didn't say anything. He just took a sip of his beer and smiled faintly. It wasn't a smile of revenge or malicious satisfaction. It was the smile of someone who knows life always collects what's owed, and collects it precisely. Because in the end, Carl didn't have to do anything beyond revealing the truth. He didn't make things up, exaggerate, or lie. He simply let Rachel's and Marcus's actions speak for themselves. And the consequences came naturally, as they always do when you play with fire. Today, Carl keeps running his shop. He has good days and bad days, like everyone else. But he sleeps peacefully, knowing he never betrayed anyone's trust, never lied, never played dirty. And to him, that's worth more than anything. Meanwhile, Rachel carries the weight of her own choices. She lost her husband, her job, her reputation. And Marcus, who thought he was untouchable, learned that no one is big enough to escape their own lies. And Carl? Carl learned that the greatest victory after betrayal isn't revenge, it's simply moving forward with your head held high, knowing you did the right thing. Because in the end, the truth always comes out. And when it does, it spares no one. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.